Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the continuation of the Middle of the Pack Racing League Cruising USA GR86 Championship for 2023, as brought to you on the premier sim racing platform available only on PC, known as iRacing. And today we come back from our mid-season break, the first of two of them, to continue the story with round 5 of 12 in what has proven to be a highly testing but competitive series all the way through. Testing for our drivers, of course, in terms of the multitude of circuits and the car in their hands, but competitive in terms of how close the classes are as our drivers get underway with the second cup in the 3 Cup series, while they make the way now into the Midwest State Cup. Of course, this cup being a celebration of what is all the circuits available in the Midwest States, the United States of America, and this series as a whole being a celebration of motorsport across the US of A. And what better car to celebrate it in than the newly introduced by Gazoo Racing North America, and that is the Toyota GR86 Cup car, bringing it all together 2023. And as our drivers get ready to go racing in the background, let's take you through our schedule for today, times in Greenwich Mean Time or Universal Coordinated Time at UTC, and indeed talk a little bit about our circuit. Well, in terms of our times, firstly, we'll be getting underway with our qualifying session in just under 13 minutes, and that'll be a 15-minute session where we'll see our classes out of the circuit, whether they be Pro, Prime or Am, according to a defined sequence which we'll come onto, and then straight after qualifying we'll make our way to the grid for our one and only race today, and that is the 30-minute sprint race that will kick off at approximately 5:30. Now, we should point out to you that this broadcast is a post-round broadcast whereby all the racing action occurred as of early this week, back on what was Wednesday the 15th of February, but we're bringing it to you as if it were live this Saturday the 18th of February, and that means I, as your host and commentator, do not know what happens, whether it be in the final practice warm-up session, in the qualifying session, or indeed in the race itself. It's all new to me, and we do ask that you guys and girls in the chat, whether you're on YouTube or alternatively on Twitch, avoid any potential spoilers if you do know what happens or you're a competitor in this race, of course, for all those tuning in who are the uninitiated. In terms of tuning, you can tune in live via 2 media platforms for your viewing pleasure. Firstly, you can tune in via YouTube. You can go to youtube.com and search for Paul Walsh or TX11TX. Alternatively, if you're more Twitch inclined, you can always go to twitch.tv/TX11 and tune in there. But who is TX11? Who is Paul Walsh? Well, allow me to introduce myself. I'm your host and commentator, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Paul Walsh, also known as TX11 or Brit of the Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. Now we bring you all of your racing action over the entirety of this series. And what a series it has been so far. And what better circuit to return to than the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Spanning on the road course here, as we can see on our mini circuit map available to us at 3.85 kilometres in length. This circuit, affectionately known as the Brickyard, opened all the way back in the early 1900s, and the Brickyard being the nickname given to it, of course, through the paving of the road surface with bricks in 1909. But the bricks are gone these days. It's been returned to more conventional racing at tarmac and asphalt, albeit the only bricks that do exist are 3 feet of bricks on the start-finish line. Of course, a celebration and a tribute to the original Brickyard, but what has continued to stay the same all the way through this circuit's history is the fact that it has drawn in crowds around the world for most major international motorsporting series, ranging all the way from NASCAR through to Formula 1, albeit a bit of controversy with regards to Formula 1 visiting Indianapolis. Those of you who will cast your minds back to the 2006 Indianapolis US Grand Prix, but we put those controversial moments beside, and the key thing with this circuit, of course, with its road course, is the high intensity, high speed racing action, and in these cup cars it's certainly going to be a tricky one for our drivers to get back underway and carry the momentum into the second third of this championship. But as we come into the championship schedule then, we can see here that we concluded last time out back on the 1st of February, the Big State Cup. The first cup being a celebration of all the largest states in the United States of America. Started off with round number 1 at Watkins Glen in the state of New York. The equivalent of a middle of the pack racing league does Toyotas that are combined with NASCAR, with the fact we saw there at the Cup Classic course, it was just as much about keeping it in the toe as it was about lifting off and coasting on through each and every corner, and it went down to the wire in the Pro Class all the way to the finish line. Then one forward a week, we made our way from the state of New York over to the state of California, and now on the West Coast, we saw on the 18th of January our drivers take to the Laguna Seca Raceway circuit, known for as the WorldTech Raceway Laguna Seca, of course, and there many stumbled over the corkscrew chicane, but those who found themselves clear found themselves to have a heroic run, and the most heroic of them all, of course, was the Am driver who came from nowhere of Samuel Bernardi to take the win. In round number 3, we stayed in the state of California, but made our way to the city of Long Beach, the Long Beach Grand Prix. And on the 25th of January there, we saw sparks fly aplenty, as many of the big favourites in all of our classes, whether it be Pro, Prime or Am, all ended up having a near miss or a major scrape with the wall, and it was all about keeping it calm and consistent. But of course, Mika Hendricks' absolute daredevil pass into the Fountain region, well, that's the best overtake of the season so far we have seen, and surely there's going to be plenty more to come. And then last time out, of course, we wrapped up the Big State Cup in the state of Texas at the Circuit of the Americas, or COTA as it's known in short, in our first feature race round of the season, and that was on the 1st of February, and there it was all about strategy and strategic smarts really paying off for a good number of drivers. But now we move into the Midwest Cup, and of course today is Indianapolis, and after today we make our way from the state of Indiana to the state of Ohio for the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course, a highly technical circuit which will put our drivers to the test with regards to their handling capabilities, and that'll be on the 22nd of February, before on the 1st of March we make our way over to the city of Detroit for the Detroit Grand Prix at Belle Isle Park, or known in the state of Michigan, and there in the city of Detroit we're going to see it get quite rough and ready for our drivers. Indeed, a circuit like no other when it comes to street circuits, but more on that in 2 weeks' time. And then we bring the Midwest Cup to a close with Road America in the state of Wisconsin. In the picturesque region of Elkhart Lake, we'll see our drivers take to the circuit for our second feature race round of the season, and that'll be on the 8th of March to wrap up the Midwest Cup. Then we'll take our second mid-season break before returning on the 22nd of March to start off the Southern State Cup, and that'll be a celebration of all states in the South, starting with the Georgia State Road Atlanta Circuit, the roller coaster ride of road racing. And then in round number 10, our drivers will be making their way to the Barber Motorsports Park, and there in the state of Alabama, they'll be taking on a circuit which is much loved across the US of A with regards to drives all old and new. And after the 29th of March, on the 5th of April, they'll be making their way to the state of Florida, which is where they'll stay for a double-header in the final 2 rounds, with round 11 marking our final sprint race round, and that will be at the Sebring Circuit, the classic airfield circuit. And in the conclusion, in round number 12, we bring the curtain down in the Sunshine State with a visit to Daytona Road Course, and that'll be our final feature on the 12th of April. But still plenty of racing to come. But I can hear you asking the question, how do the championship stand so far after 4 rounds of 12? Well, to give you a recap then, we can see here starting with the Pro Class in the Drivers' Championship, James Carr leads the way by 6 points over Aaron Lahr, with James Carr being crowned, of course, champion in the Big State Cup last time out, but he has got a lot of pressure building on him with Aaron Lahr and Jason Landry tied on points, but Lahr ahead of Landry based on result countback, and of course Jason Landry missing one of the rounds, missing the round at Long Beach, and therefore losing out on the opportunity to seal the Big State Cup for himself, and therefore he'll be looking to bounce back as strong as possible tonight. 9, he wants to get off to a good start, but James Carr will really need to dig in if he wants to make it 2 cups out of 2. Mika Hendricks in P4, only a further 9 points off there, and continue to rise, while the big stars in the Pro Class are on a 12-point advantage over James Logston, who on 134 points really demarks the fact the top 5 have broken away from the rest of the field, with Carl Ranieri there in P6 and 115 points, 2 clear of Francois Schink, with a further point to Tanner Dibble, and a further point to John Lauzon, and a further point so to Jordan Butler. But the key point you can see here is that our top 5 is incredibly close, and P6 through to P10 are just as close. It is a rivalry going all the way down to the wire, and the Pro Class being in 2 distinct categories at the moment, the top 5 and the best of the rest, but right now the rest are all fighting on for that accolade of being the best of the group. Jerome Baggiano's best of the rest there in terms of outside the top 10 on 81 points, with his 5 points clear of Matej Georgiou, with Carlos Fila there yet to compete on 0 points. We then come on to the Pro-Am class, and we can see that Logan McKenzie, by 16 points, taking the Big State Cup crown as of last round, and Alberto Alvarez there with a fast start in the championship, losing a lot of momentum going through rounds 2 and 3 in particular, and for Alvarez, it's all about redemption today as we kick off the Midwest State Cup. Craig Parks, meanwhile, a further 9 points behind, currently in a bit of a no-man's land that he's trying to turn around in the run to P2, and he's starting to break away from P4 driver Edwin Offred there, who sits a further, 18 points behind, and an Offred, the true no-man's land driver at the moment, with a lot of pace last time out at the Circuit of the Americas, and he'll be looking to showcase that once again as he continues to close the gap to the top 3. He's got an advantageous gap in return of 18 points over Donald Sepek, with Jonathan Ballard and Kirk Lane both joined up points on 75 apiece, but Ballard ahead of Lane based on result countback, and it's Samuel Cran, Milan Harris and Ilya Speak who complete the top 10, albeit you see Cran and Harris only 1 point between the two of them. Adrian Federaski, 4 points off the top 10 there. Best the rest in P11. Head of Lee Porter, who's a further point behind. And then Christopher Tarango and Carlos Hafcott complete the standings. But we should point out that Lee Porter will not be competing any more in this season. And that is because he has volunteered his racing duties instead to become our race control race director for all remaining rounds. So thank you to Lee. We really do appreciate that. Of course, he sacrifices the racing, but it means that all of our safety cars will be deployed by our dedicated race control steward now of Lee Porter. And we're absolutely pleased to have that. And also, we should point out that Christopher Tarango has been moved from the Pro-Am class to the Am class as of round 5 onwards. A mid-season evaluation was conducted after round number 4, and the only class change we will see is that Tarango has moved to the Am class. But we're representing him here to, of course, show you the state of play as of the conclusion of round 4. And we can see there are no points for Jermaine Warren, John Wilding, or Justin Wiley. They've yet to compete in the round, but we will have Jermaine Warren taken to the circuit tonight. Then we come on to the AM class, so we can see here your championship winner in the Big State Cup, Samuel Bernardi on 123 points, 5 clear of Daniel Sedino, and Bernardi with 3 wins on the bounce. Can he make it a 4th on the bounce day? He really has been the man to beat over the last couple of rounds, but that's not to say that Daniel Sedino and Fernando Takahashi have not been right there with him, and the same could be said for Mark Senegal, but it really has been the Bernardi show, and can Sedino find a way to upset that? And with Takahashi so close on pace as well, but not quite having the consistency of the races so far, and Senegal not quite having the pace in qualifying, but having the consistency of the racing, they're all going to want to take a bite out of the championship leader. Jack Davis in P5 there, 5 points clear of Auguste Blondel, with Dan Witchlock and Ian Henneberry a little bit further behind, and then we can see Billman DaCosta and Nick Bader completing the top 10, with Rodney Felker in P11 only outside the top 10 based on result countback, and 4 points clear of Glenn Bratton, who's looking for a good result today. Roger Ganesh in P13 now with 58 points, 5 clear PG Christensen, with Ines Usul, Dan Okranza, Albert Brown and Spencer Cocaine completed the standings, and we can see that Elias Montanes and also Tyler Montanes yet to compete in a single round and therefore on 0 points. But as we come onto the Teams Championship, well, the story here is that Sunday GT Turtles lead the way by 23 points over Beaver Buzz Energy, and well, Sunday GT Turtles have had an advantage throughout, but they'll need to do well today if they want to keep that advantage, because Beaver Buzz Energy are definitely on the rise. Middle of the pack racing Jedi, meanwhile P3. 20 points clear of Team Bear Pope, and continue to try and chase down the top 2, with DNA Motorsports inching closer to the top 4. They're only 7 points adrift. Pan Am Racing in P6 on 208 points. They'll need to steer clear of Hassel's Motorsports today, with only a point between the two teams, and it's Bear Pope 0, Rockefeller Racing White and Rockefeller Racing Pink, who complete the top 10, with middle of the pack Sif on 82 points, P11, and QZ Motorsports there, bringing up the rear on 30 points in P12. But coming from our standings then to our circuit for today, it is none other than the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course circuit, located, of course, in the town of Speedway in the state of Indiana, in the United States of America. This circuit, as you can see from the circuit map provided us by SimRacingWiki.com, combines a good portion of the oval with also an absolutely challenging infield section. With the fact as our drivers make their way down the start-finish straight, they'll charge all the way down to turn number 1. That'll be the top-end speeds that they reach there in the way to the braking zone up into top gear, and they'll come all the way down the gearbox to the second to lowest gear, if not the lowest gear, and roll the way into turn 1. The sweeping section of turns 1 and 2, it looks a little bit similar to the opening section of the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya in Spain, and well, you'd be correct in that regard. And as our drivers make their way out of turn 2, they'll sweep the way through turn 3 and up into a very tricky right-handed braking zone for turn number 4, where it's all about that late apex and being able to carry the speed out the corner so you can straight line between the chicane of 5 and 6 and make your way on the back straight up towards turn number 7. They're a very harsh braking zone. We'll see our drivers go into the left-hand right-angled corner before they sweep the way through the medium speed chicane of turns 8 and 9 and break the way up into the right-angled right-hander at turn number 10, and then they briefly make their way back onto the oval section before braking hard into turn number 12, and as they make their way out to 12, it's the run into turn 13, a very tricky corner with an apex that comes early initially, but then they have to attack it quite aggressively on corner exit in order to carry all the speed through the kink of 14 to go back onto the oval start finish straight and make their way to turn 1 once again. And well, with that, you can imagine all our drivers will be absolutely itching to get it right from the outset. But in terms of our rules for today, to give you a reminder of our rules, in terms of setups, drivers shall run a fixed setup provided by the middle of the pack Racing League, and car fuel loads will be restricted to 35 litres as always. Qualifying wise, an open qualifying format shall be used where all of our drivers will take to the circuit. It will last 15 minutes and split into 2 equal halves, and in those halves of 7.5 minutes each, in the first half we'll see our AM class take to the circuit, and in the second half they'll be called in, and the Prams and the Pros will take to the circuit and put in their lap times. In the sprint race, the race shall start via a grid start, as is the tradition in this series, which each driver having one fast repair available, and the driver shall be detrimented with a drive-through penalty if they accumulate 18 or more instant points, and should there be a major incident at the race start, a safety car may be deployed, otherwise the safety car shall not be deployed during the race. So it'll only be on that potential open lap if we are going to see one. But that's enough rules, regulation, everything in between. I know what you're all here for. We're here for racing, and as we see our drivers get themselves set right now, well, we can see a good number of them in the pit lane there, all waiting to go, including Pan Am Racing's Alberto Alvarez, who really does need to find a way to bounce back versus this man in the Pro-Am Championship, Logan McKenzie. And we can see there the privateer in the Tide Machine having a brilliant run last time out, and can he continue that run today? That'll be the challenge that he is beset with only 10 seconds to go before we head into the qualified session. As our drivers come on through here, of course, that does give us a quick opportunity to say hello to you guys and girls tuning in via the Twitch and YouTube channels. And we say hello on the YouTube there to Jason Landry, who's excited for race day. And, well, to be fair, it's always a good day when it's race day, they say. And welcome to you, Jason. And indeed, if you are tuning in right now, don't be shy. Feel free to say hi. But we can see there in the timings, it looks like Landry taking the fastest lap in the practice session. But practice is one part of the story. And, well, the other part of the story is actually delivering it there in qualifying, as it does look as though we have a little bit of a glitch there with regards to our timing tower. So we'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen, to get that result. It does look as though some times are carried over from practice, and, well, we will be back within a minute to get that fixed. Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, as we return then for the build-up to the qualifying session, it did look as though some of our practice times carried on over for the purposes of qualifying, and that added a little bit of confusion with regards to the times being set by drivers, but we've got that issue resolved now, and as our drivers get underway, well, it's first the change of the AMs here to make the way out onto the circuit, and of course for our AM drivers, this can feel as though they're doing the hard work for the Pro-Ams and the Pros, for the simple reason they'll be helping to lay down the rubber on the tarmac, and also helping to bring the track temperature up. And speaking of that track temperature, well, the weather at the moment, it's quite a nice day here today in the state of Indiana, and we can see that on the right hand side of your screen. We do have an ambient temperature of which 26 degrees centigrade and a track temperature currently of 27 degrees centigrade, and with that, those will be quite comfortable conditions for our drives. It won't be too hot but too cold either, and therefore we can expect some rather nice and consistent lap times to come in, albeit that track temperature will rise up to in the region of about 30 degrees centigrade by the time we do see our Pros and Primes make the way on out, and therefore, as I said earlier, the AMs really doing the hard work of getting the track rubbered in for the Primes and the Pros. But in terms of what does it take to have a good qualifying lap here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway circuit, well, the thing about this circuit is, particularly these cup cars, it's all about speed. You need to carry as much speed as possible from corner to corner, and particularly with the extended runs out of turn 14 to turn number 1, and also the run out of turn 4 all the way out to turn 7, which you're seeing Dan Vikchuk right now make his way into the braking zone here. Every mile an hour extra you can carry, that is going to be worth a tenth or two a time each and every way on a given lap. And as we see Vikchuk making his way up through, I think a bit of a mistake there for one of our drivers, and I'm not sure if that was Glenn Bratton getting it wrong. May have been. In fact, it was Glenn Bratton, as he's just limping on through the chicane of 8 and 9 there and staying clear as drivers make the way on through. An understandable design not to be a nuisance or make a nuisance of himself to his peers making the way on around. But as he comes on through, we do say hello to a newcomer today, and that is in the form of Dave Hernandez, who joins us in the AM class. And well, of course, he's new to the field, and with that, that does present the challenge. He's got to find his feet, and he's got to find his feet very rapidly indeed, because a lot of drivers now will have their established rivalries, and then you have a newcomer on board, and it's like somebody who joins a school year midway through. Everyone's made their friends at social groups, and now Hernandez is coming in, and perhaps he'll shake up things in the AM class ever further, and perhaps for what is the likes of Bernardi, who we're not seeing on the grid today, I think decided not to be able to make this round, and therefore we hope to see him next time out. Well, Hernandez, could he potentially be one of the drivers to rise to the front of the AM field and really take the fight, or will he find himself battling inside the midfield? Well, we'll have to find out as our drivers make the way onto their initial flying laps here, and once they roll the way on through, Glenn Bratton, of course, with that mistake on his outlap, he won't want to make that mistake twice, but as they break the way down into turn number 1, definitely it will feel as though they take a long time to get down towards turn 1, given the relative speed to these Toyotas. Remembering, running an engine with a power output of approximately 220 horsepower, so not a major amount of speed in these cars. They don't have the top end speed of, say, a GT3 car, for example, or a GT4, but the thing about these cars as well, coming in just shy of a million to compete in the full 2023 Real World GR Cup Series being hosted in the United States of America, and of course a major collaboration effort between iRacing and Toyota Gazoo Racing to bring this car to life in the iRacing simulator. This car is made for drivers of all skill levels, so long as you've got the money in the pocket, and with it comes absolute fun in a car which has definitely taken the world by storm. And the new Toyota GR86, well, compared to the previous GT86, it is a world apart with its little engine, and also the fact this car very nimble to the touch with the steering wheel. But as our drivers are making the way to the end of their initial fast laps, we do see here Nick Vader making his way through the long right at turn number 11. We'll very shortly be getting an onboard lap with one of our drivers, as we see Ian Henneberry making his way out of the final corner and onto the start finish straight to go onto another lap. And we jump aboard here with the Team Barefoot driver as he takes us around for a lap of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway road course. Heading down towards turn number 1, looking to his left-hand side for his brake mark here. You can see the yard boards at the top on the left, and as he brakes down, they're braking at the 300-yard board, coming all the way down the gearbox to second gear, immediately flexing the car into turn 2, having to pull the car to the right before chucking it into the left. And as he comes through 3, flat out here as he builds up through the gearbox, lets the car naturally want to understeer away from the corner, and then braking into turn number 4, down to second gear, back on the power immediately now as he makes his way out through the gearbox, roaring on through, flat out there through the chicane, making sure to connect the 2 apex curves together. And as he heads on down the back straight in the run to turn number 7, getting ready to head onto the brakes very shortly, up to 5th gear here, and now waiting for his marker at the right hand side, looking there for the 300-yard board, hitting his mark on the brakes, coming down all the way to second gear, and now bringing the car over to the left. You've got a quickly free over here to set up the run through the turn 8-9 chicane, up to 3rd to settle the car, rolling it in, drops to 2nd there. I think a little bit of hesitancy from Hennebrink, perhaps he should have stayed in 3rd just to carry a bit more comfort and speed into turn 10, but he rolls his way out now back up through the gearbox, currently P4 in class, and as he rolls his way through the long right hander at turn number 11, up to 4th gear, won't be reaching 5th this time, looks to his left hand side for his brake marker, braking at 250 yards from corner apex, a very tricky corner, carries a bit too much speed onto the grass, and Hennebrink goes round there, being caught out by turn 12, and turn 12, a very tricky corner. It catches out even the best of drivers given how sharp the run into the apex is and how narrow the road is on corner exit. But meanwhile, Roger Ganesh having no such trouble at turn at 12 into 13, and as he makes his way out of the final corner, head to line, and Hennebrink the fastest of everybody in sector 2, so he's going to be absolutely gutted with the fact that the lap went astray. But Ganesh there at 43.604 improves up to P4. Meanwhile, Fernando Takahashi a 41.777, almost a whole second faster than what anybody else has been able to do so far for what is their number 223 drive. And we have seen this from Takahashi. He has really been one of the drivers to beat in qualifying season throughout, and as he makes his way into turn number 2, well, right now can Takahashi find pole position in class here today, as meanwhile we do look to Rodney Felker, who as he rolls his way on through the left-hander at turn number 2, keeping it calm and keeping it consistent there in the privateer machine as he heads into the right-hander at turn number 4, and with that P4 at the moment, the times continue to be exchanged here, well, he'll be thinking about how can he get a little bit further up the order there, only 1/10 off of Nick Bader, and well, with those gaps right now, it does seem to be quite the open battle to be the other driver who is on the front row of the AM grid, the proverbial AM grid, of course, because remember, our drivers do line up intermingled across classes, as we can tell you that Indy Jusel not making his way out to circuit, the only AM driver who has yet to set a time and has yet to leave the pit lane, and I think for Jusel maybe having some technical issues with the car and therefore difficulty. But meanwhile, speaking of difficulty, oh goodness me, it's gone very, very wrong there, and that is Roger Ganesh going around at turn at number 11, and well, the fact he spiraled off up onto the oval would suggest to me he had a mistake at 10, which has chucked him onto the grass on the inside of the road into 11, and then in the process the car's gone back out where he's tried to correct the car with some corrective steering, and in the end he's chucked it up onto the oval in return. But definitely an uncommon place to be for a driver getting it wrong on the road course of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But Ganesh there in the pit lane, therefore his qualifying session will be done and dusted, as we are hearing that our pros and primes are now get ready to make their way out to the circuit. Indeed, with 7.5 minutes complete, we now see our AM drivers finish their final laps. Fernando Takahashi does not improve on his final lap, he stays where he is. Meanwhile, Rodney Felker comes across to the line, he does not improve either. What about Ian Henneberry? Can he improve given the lap time he did put in previously? He does not improve, there stays P8. I don't think we'll see too many improvements at all. Dan Vitchett meanwhile improves in subsector 2, crosses the timeline then as he makes his way across it. Does he find more lap time? No, he stays exactly where he is, P6, and no change there. And well, with that, we have only got one more driver out on circuit, and that's Mark Senegal, who did manage to get onto a lap just in time. So we have one AM driver right now who's finished off his session, and then the rest of our drivers are all pros and primes who are currently warming up. And well, for Senegal, of course, now he has the circuit in the ideal state, which is it's got the max amount of rubber laid down within his class's qualifying session, and therefore he could theoretically be on course to snatch away that pole from Takahashi. But in terms of the sector times, he's improving in subsector 2 and subsector 3. Didn't improve in subsector 1, but very close to his previous best, only half a tenth off. And as he rolls his way out of 13 into 14, 14. What's it going to be for the 227 driver here as he heads to the line? Is it going to be enough as he comes on through? Well, he's got 9.5 attempts to find on a single lap. That's going to have to go some way as he crosses the line. It's a 42.340, but it's not enough. He'll start P2 in class, but of course now we have to wait to see where our pros and prams fit into the fixture, as meanwhile we do look to our aforementioned drivers making their way on around, and we've got a couple of drivers off there, and it looks to be Jermaine Warren and what is James Carr in a little bit of an entanglement there. And well, for James Carr, definitely not the way you want it to go as they sweep the way through 8 and 9. I wonder if it was contact or whether both of them have just been involved in a similar mistake at the same point of the circuit, but either way that's going to cost them a sizable amount of time in their qualifying session, and indeed probably take away a qualifying lap as a whole. As meanwhile we look to the start finish straight here, and you can see Aaron Lahr tucked in behind two of his peers. They make their way down towards turn 1 once again. You look into the lime green machine as he rolls his way into the right hander of one in the 47 car, and well, Aaron Lahr very fast on his warm-up lap, really going for gold. As they all come on through here now, it's all about who is going to get that initial lap on the board, who can set that provisional pole time in class and overall. Of course, we would expect our pros and pro-ams to be faster than our ams on relative pace average. We have seen some exceptions that, of course, this season where some of our ams have really out-qualified a good number of their peers and also really stuck it into the primes, and even a couple of the pros have been able to out-qualify. But as the drivers make their way down towards that turn number 7 here onto the brakes, you can already see the Lahr caught up behind another driver under brake. I'm not quite sure who that is at the moment, but definitely close on in. I believe that is the 111 car there that he's tucked in behind him. In fact, we don't have a 111 car. I think it's the 117 car. Craig Parks just in front, and as they come through, in fact, that's not Craig Parks at all. So we're just going to, unfortunately, not get that quite right on the call, but we see Craig Parks here heading on through at turn number 4 at the moment and towards the back of the group as he rolls his way on down and around. But meanwhile, at the very head of the group is John Lauzon in the Beaver Buzz Energy Machine coming on through turn at number 12 into 30 he goes. You can just see there the way they have to serpentine their way through the corners, having to balance that weight transfer of the car. Of course, these machines front engine rear wheel drive, but with quite a thin wheelbase, they do love to roll on the round. As he makes his way out to the final corner, well, Lauzon staying over to the right hand side here. I think, believing he's on a very strong lap to kick off his qualifying session as he crosses the line there. It's a 41.679. It is visual pole, but immediately Jason Landry, the first driver to hit a 40.911, but times continue to pour on in, and we can see even more drivers coming around here. Tanner Dibble as well as he makes his way to the line. The DNA Motorsports driver here looking to have a good run after a difficult end to his Big State Cup campaign, and he goes P6 on the 41.603. But as they all make their way now onto their second flying laps, we've also got a little bit further back. I do believe it is none other than Alberto Alvarez. In fact, he's already making his way onto his next lap, but we do have Adam Ballard heading across the timeline there, and well, it's a 2-minute 10.8 for Ballard. I think it hasn't gone quite right at all in his first qualifying lap. He's going to have to do another one soon as Craig Parks just pips him there by 15 seconds, but Parks also not with a representative time on the board, so I think a good number of drivers here being costed earlier on. But meanwhile, looking back up towards the top drivers at this time, particularly in the Pro Class, James Logs to P2 overall in class, but he is only there by less than a tenth over Mika Hendricks. And well, you would imagine that for Logs and the Team Bearpo driver here, of course, not quite having the pace in the last couple of rounds compared to some of his peers, but giving it everything he can. And now he'll be thinking about, okay, Landry seems to be out of touch of everyone here, but what can I do to really beat the best of the rest on that front row and make sure that P2 goes to me? Because, of course, bringing over second place in itself would be a huge achievement here if Landry was to break away. But as they all make their way through at 12 into 13, you see everybody trying to get the toe off of one another here, feeling as though there's a lot more lap time to be unlocked if they're in the toe. But as they roll the way towards the timeline, well, we do look to what is John Lauzon towards the mid portion of this group as he heads on through there. And does Lauzon improve? No, he does not, as he heads down towards turn number 1 once again. And we can see that bit of mix-up in drives now. Everybody trying to outstep one another. But Alberto Alvarez moves up to P10 on what is there, a 41.893. But we also do have Tanner Dibble heading to the timeline very shortly. And as he crosses the line, we jump on board here for an on-board lap with the pro driver. Making its way down towards turn number 1 and looking to go full attack now. The car's going to be the lightest it will ever be in this qualifying session, and as he makes his way into the right hander, that's Lauzon off into the wall there, I do believe, off in the distance, rolling his way through 1 and 2, keeping it comfortable in second gear as he now comes up towards turn 3 and rolling up towards 4 he goes. But in third gear, will he drop down to second? No, he stays in third, attacks the apex. We've got a driver off there. but he manages to avoid the driver off. That's Alberto Alvarez, who's had an off. A bit of a mistake there from Alvarez, and that's going to cost him the rest of his qualifying session. But as he charges up towards turn number 7, Paul Dibble absolutely now foot to the floor. He'll be literally trying to put his foot through the floor of the car in order to get as much speed as possible, wishing the car along, but braking about 280 yards into turn number 7, and takes a very tight exit line there to set up the run through the chicane. A nice line from Dibble up to 3rd, keeps the car in 3rd gear, just a lifted coast. He rolls up into turn number 10, goes a little bit deep, the car just steps away from him, but he avoids the grass there. But with that, it's going to cost him at least 2 attempts now as he goes on the run round to turn 12 via 11, and building up the speed here, just letting the car roll up onto the banking before braking alongside the wall here, braking at 200 yards as he comes down to 2nd gear, bringing the car over to the right once again into turn 13. And well, turn 12's hard enough as it is, but it's 13. You see, you've got to wait forever to find that late apex point, but as he makes way out the corner, nicely done. Into line, Jason Landry improves the overall pole time to a 40.527. It is half a second clear of James Logsdon, but meanwhile Dibble heads his way to the line. Can he go a little bit further from where he is currently in P6? Well, I think with that mistake it will have unfounded his lap, and indeed he does not improve as he does get another lap on the board with 10 seconds to go. But a number of our drivers now will not have as much fortune here, as meanwhile Alberto Alvarez crosses the line, does not improve, stays P11. Checker flag out here, and Alvarez will be the last driver to get in one more qualifying lap, as meanwhile we look to Craig Parks, who's heading to the timing line. And what will Craig Parks be able to find here as he heads on through? Currently P25, that's not where he'll want to start. He jumps to P17, but it's a difficult day for the Pro-Am driver who'll be starting P6 in class, 17th overall on circuit, and will more time still to come on in. And with that, he's the only driver, in fact, who's out of the circuit yet to get one more lap in. And I do believe Jermaine Warren also in the pit lane at the moment and deciding that it wasn't going to work out in the end. But as we do here, look to Jason Landry, our provisional pole sitter, making his way into turn number 12. I think Landry right now has got it done and dusted, but by how much is the margin as he rolls his way through for the Sunday GT Turtles team, coming into 13. Well, for Landry, it's looking good, albeit this lap is not an improvement unless he pulls out a magical final sector. He'll be staying on that 40.527, but I don't think he's going to be complaining too much, as meanwhile Aaron Lahr, currently P8, and what is there, P7 in the Pro class, heading to the timeline, getting the toe off of Landry, being guided all the way to the line. This could be a significant improvement here from Lahr. It moves in P3 in a 41.320, and that's exactly what the doctor orders. Meanwhile, Edwin Offre making his way out to the final corner here. He's currently your prime pole sitter by a sizable margin. John Lauzon jumps up to P3 and Offred drops to P5 as a result. Lahr drops to P4, and as they come to the timing line, well, and Offred, can he go a little bit faster? No, he cannot. Has he got anybody threatening at the moment? Logan McKenzie is perhaps the only one out there who can threaten him, but McKenzie not improving on this lap by the looks of things. It's yellow sectors across the board, which means he hasn't improved on his personal best, and indeed as he comes to the line there, it's going to be a P16 start for McKenzie. So really, we've had a couple of bucks in the trend with regards to drivers, but in terms of our pole sitters, it is going to be Jason Landry, who takes overall pole and pro pole. Edwin Offre a P5 overall pro and pole, 7 places clear of his peers. And then in the AM class, it's Fernando Takahashi who will line up P11 on the grid overall and 4 places clear of his next peer, and that is Mark Senegal. But what a qualifying session in the end. And definitely Landry putting a huge yardstick down compared to the rest of the field. But is that the way it's going to play out in the race? Well, we're only moments away from heading into the grid and finding out how the story unfolds. But it is a beautiful day here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway in terms of a packed out crowd. Well, it's the way it goes with regards to the amount of race that draws spectators year in, year out here to the state of Indiana. And now, as all our drivers have returned to the pit boxes, they'll shortly make their way back out to circuit for our 30-minute sprint. And as they line on up, then this is how the grid is formed for round number 5 of 12 in the Cruising USA GR86 Championship, hosted by the Middle of the Pack Racing League. It's Sunday GT Turtles. Jason Landry takes pole position, half a second clear of Barefoot Racing's James Logsdon. The two pros line up together there and looking to dance into turn 1. John Lauzon in P3 there, starts off the second row for Beaver Buzz Energy, joined by Aaron Lahr, who starts P4, and ahead of what is Edwin Offre for Middle of the Pack Jedi. Your prime pole sitter starts off the third row, joined by Beaver Buzz Energy's Mika Hendricks. Jordan Butler for DNA Motorsports lines up P7, joined on the fourth row by his teammate Tanner Dibble, and then it's Francois Sching, who is joined by AM pole sitter Middle of the Pack Racing at Jedi's Fernando Takahashi, who will start P10. Jerome Bajulas for BWS Energy and Alberto Alvarez for Pan Am Racing line up on your 6th row, and they'll be followed up by the pairing of Samuel Cram for Bear Pope Racing and middle of the pack Racing Sif's Jermaine Warren on the 7th row, and on the 8th row it's the Am and Mark Senegal for Sunday GT Turtles, joined by the privateer of Logan McKinsey. On row number 9 we have Craig Parks and Adam J. Ballard, the Rockefeller Racing White Dry, having a good qualifying session, and it's Nick Bader, the privateer, joined by James Carr on the 10th row. On row 11 it's Pan Am Racing's Rodney Felker, who has alongside Glenn Bratton, and on the 12th row it's Dan Victor, who is joined by Sunday GT Turtles Roger Ganesh, who had a very difficult qualifying session, and then on the 13th row it's Ian Henneberry for Bear Pope Zero, who is joined by Dave Hernandez, the privateer, and on the final row it will be Ian as usual. If they're able to get the car repaired, who'll be starting at P27 and last on the grid, with Lee Porter, of course, the middle of the pack SIF driver in the race control booth for this race, and all races going forward as we're to understand it. But with 30 seconds to go, not long left on the grid countdown here, ladies and gentlemen, and indeed everybody absolutely spoiling for the race in the run down towards turn number 1, and will Jason Landry get the standing start he so craves and make his way away, or will James Logston here find a way to outpace Landry out of the box and make his way into lead before they reach the first apex? Well, we're about to find out as the lights are about to get underway. And it's lights out and away we go for round number 5 as one driver immediately getting out of sequence there and having to take evasive action. We're not quite sure who that was who dived to the middle of the road, but everyone's safely away regardless as they make the way down towards turn 1. But you can see already Jason Landry getting a good start. John Lauzon tucking up behind Landry, and meanwhile we can see here that Logston having to go a bit defensive versus Lauzon. Meanwhile further back Edwin Nofre, they're being caught up a little bit there on the inside by Mika Hendricks as they roll the way through the opening corner, and as they come 2 by 2 into turns 1 and 2, well, very quickly most drivers will need to settle their way down into some sort of rhythm here as they come out of turn. We can see Logan McKinsey on the inside there. Oh, but what is Mark Senegal as they make the way up into turn 4. Further back, meanwhile, Rodney Felker under pressure from what is there, Roger Ganesh, but as they battle the way on through, trying to make the move here versus Glenn Bratton, but Bratton defends the inside and keeps it at bay as Ganesh now tries to find the counter-attack through the chicane, but can't find it and has to back off in the end. But meanwhile, looking back up to your leaders here, we can see that Jason Landry, after the opening half of the lap, holds the lead over James Logston, with John Lauzon in the end not able to make it count around the outside into 1, and Logston staying there as a thorn in Landry's side as they head into the second chicane at turns 8 and 9, but as they roll the way on through in the long sequence. Meanwhile, up the inside goes Fernando Takahashi there versus Jermaine Warren, but as they come out of the corner, will Takahashi going a little bit deep, and Jermaine Warren defending well there to hold on to the position, and Takahashi going overly deep out of 10, and it means that Logan McKinsey will now come on through into P11 as they make their way through turn 11 and into 12, but rolling the way on down. Adam Ballard here on the inside of Craig Parks, gaining 1 place over Parks, but losing an overall position since the start of this race. But as they break the way on down here, we'll get the very tight Constantine to roll into turn number 12. Everybody too wide as they emerge from the corner here and all trying to jostle for position as they exit through 13 very shortly. Almost going a bit wide there in Henneberry, but just about keeps on circuit, gets a really planted run off of the penultimate corner. And as they head through 14, Henneberry's going to have a nose ahead. And meanwhile, just in front, we can see Gran and Bader battling for position. Indeed, it is like Noah's Ark, 2 by 2 hurrah they go, but they're battling for position here as they roll the way down towards the next corner and heading on to another lap. But at the front of this group, Alberto Alvarez and Fernando Takahashi, with Alvarez on the left hand side of your picture, the Pan Am Racing driver defending here versus the Am, and of course all the drivers receive points for overall position, albeit there are bonus points available to our podium finishers in the Prime and Am classes. But all good it's be, and it's gone wrong for one driver, and that's Jermaine Warren with an instant there, and he's going to drop down the field like a stone. But I think also Adam Ballard may have been caught up in a bit of an instance. We can see that Ballard turning the car around as well. Now whether they came into an instant together or separately, we can't give you a replay on that due to limitation on the iRacing replay file, but what we can tell is it's gone wrong for the pair, and now they've got a lot of repair work to do with regards to their races here, albeit they've got quite a bit of time, but not the whole time in the world. As meanwhile, we look back to Alberto Alvarez here, P3 in the Prime class, is still trying to fend off Fernando Takahashi as they head into turn number 7 for the second time of asking, and the Pan Am Racing driver here really does want to now try and break away and go hunting after McKinsey, who's being bought a gap of 2 seconds already as a result of Alvarez having to do more rear guard action than forward face and offensive. But as they roll the way out to 10, well, now for Takahashi it's all about the running to the next corners. Meanwhile, Jordan Butler here making his ground ahead of Tanner Dibble. And I think the two DNA Motorsport drivers decided to exchange places there. I think Finn Butler is the faster driver at this point in time. But as they make the way into turn number 13, of course, with this being a sprint race, we're not expecting any pit stops today unless it's for damage on the car. But as they come through turn number 14 once more here, everybody settled into a room right now. But Takahashi still behind Alvarez, literally so close to be able to reach out and grab the rear wing of the Prime driver's car. But as they head down towards turn number 1 this time, I believe we've had an incident for David Hernandez. In fact, they're pointing the wrong way, parked up on the exit at turn 13 and waiting for the field to come through. But meanwhile, Glenn Bratton here with Jermaine Warren trying to go around the outside of him as the camera flips around. It's Warren on the right side of your picture in this battle for P22. Bratton on the inside and trying to go in between the two of them, trying to go for a Moses maneuver here. It's Rodney Felker coming up the gap, and as they make the way in towards turn number 1, Felker grabs one. Can he make it 2? He comes in hot, but he can't find it in the end as they roll the way through the right into left. But meanwhile, we look back up to leaders here, and Jason Landry, after 2.5 laps, continues to lead ahead of James Logston P2. We give you a recap of the top 10. John Lauzon in P3, followed by Aaron Lyon P4. Behind, Edwin Offred still holding on to the prime lead under pressure from Mika Hendricks as Hendricks moves up the inside. Onofre gets a snatch there on the rear of the car, and goodness me, Onofre with a very short and absolutely horrific moment into the wall in the middle of the pack. Jedi driver who was leading comfortably, and as soon as we cut to him, it's the commentator's curse again, ladies and gentlemen. It has cost the 199 driver very dear in terms of the fact the car just snatching there under brake, and I think the rear right tyre just slightly on the grass, and well, now his leading aspirations in ruin, as meanwhile that does mean that Mika Hendricks up to P5 ahead of Jerome Bajula's P6. These are all pro drivers we're referring to. Francois Schink P7 holding off Jordan Butler and Tanner Dill, the DNA Motorsport pair on the charge. And then P10, your lead prime driver now, Logan McKenzie, the privateer, ahead of Best the Rest, Alberto Alvarez, as they make the way out of 13 and into 14. But as they come up through the final right-hander again and head on through, and Onofre will be eventually, I think, planning to go to the pit lane, given the amount of damage on the car. But meanwhile, we can see here, Jordan Butler will try to hold off with Tanner Dill behind, and the two DNA Motorsports drivers here, I think, trying to work together, doing a little bit of bump drafting on the straight in order to gain some time versus Schink in front of them. But you can see there how the gap not really closing up right now. In fact, the gap going the way of Schink as they make the way on through. Further back in, Henneberry there on the offensive versus Coran, but also fended off Craig Parks. Of course, the Team Bear Pope drivers, the Bear Pope 0 driver Henneberry versus Team Bear Pope's what is there, Samuel Coran, and you have Parks also in the mix, and Henneberry acting as a little bit of a spacing tool here for what is Coran in terms of fending off a prime driver as they make the way into turn number 14, with Henneberry being an AM and Parks being one of the prime class. But as they roll the way out of 4 and into the chicane of 5-6 once again, all neutralised here as they make the way on through, and now onto the back stretch, and everybody just keeping their calm and cool as they roll the way up towards the next heavy braking zone. Indeed, after that nasty one for Edwin Offer, I think everybody very conscious of the fact it's very easy to get it wrong here, just putting one tyre a little bit too wide. But as they head into the left-hander here, we can see Parks trying to come in as hot as possible, but as they roll on through, meanwhile we're hearing that Jordan Butler's had it off. And that looks to be on the exit of turn number 9, heading up towards turn number 10, rolls his way back onto the circuit, but with that, it's going to drop him a long way down the order. In fact, James Carr, who's had quite a difficult start to this race, albeit he's gained 7 places overall, so he has gained a lot of ground, but James Carr definitely having a difficult qualifying session, and Jordan Butler finding his good qualifying session has now all been for naught with that incident there at turns 8 and 9, putting him all the way down to P14. But as we look from him to one driver right now up front who's still under pressure, it's Jason Landry, whose gearbox will be right on board from here as he makes way up to speed. And we do get a brief faceful there of James Logston's Bear Pope GR86 as they make the way into the braking zone for turn number 1. And as they make the way on down, well, Logston not threatening here in terms of trying to make a move, and we can understand why. I think what Logston wants here is simply this battle between the two of them and break away early on this race. But of course, the longer they stay like this, John Lauzon will stay well within touch, as Aaron Lark also looking to go on strong and on the offensive as they roll the way out to turn number 4. But you can see the top 4 definitely now starting to creep off into the distance, with P5 through to P8 in the next sequential train, and that's Hendricks, Bajula, Schink and Dibble. And then we do see at P9 downwards a further gap behind. Well, our top 8 only separated by 5 seconds currently. Indeed, it could all change at short notice. And as our drivers roll the way into turn number 7 once again, well, further back, we see Craig Parks here latching on to the back for the hunt for what is P14 there versus Jordan Butler at the head of this quartet as they break the way down. And we jump on board with Parks. He goes up the inside there of 1. He looks to make it 2. He almost makes it 3. And as he goes all in, Craig Parks there, my goodness, the man absolutely possessed to make the move. Well, he's on the outside here into the chicane. This is going to cost him a huge amount of speed, coming out of 9 into 10, but he does make one place count. And well, in Henneberry, that I think absolutely gobsmacked with regards to how the move was made, as we got a car for smoke in there, and that looks to be Mark Senegal, who's been in a major incident coming out of turn number 10 into 11. Well, that car is definitely not in a good state of mind, and with that smoke coming out right now, he'll be looking to come into the pits very soon on the exit of turn 14. But the Sunday GT Turtles drive cutting across the course there, and will to be fair, trying to get home as safe as possible, but it's not the way the 227 drives wanted it to go whatsoever. But meanwhile, looking back up inside the top 10, Jerome Bajula is here having to battle with Hendricks. In fact, trying to chase after Hendricks, but he's got the pressure from Francois Schenck. But Bajula goes in very hot under braking there, and you can see as he's come off the brakes into the apex of one, the car just wobbling slightly. And these GR86s, they do have anti-lock braking systems, they have traction control as well. You do have the ability to be quite aggressive on the brakes, with them being front engine rear wheel drive, and the cars being very light to the touch with that thin wheelbase. It does mean heavy braking can unsettle the car, and as they roll the way out to turns 5 and 6, Bajula's right now definitely putting a lot of pressure onto those front brakes and the front tyres with it, with regards to the approach into turn 1, and I think he feels as though he is under that pressure from Francois Schenck and Tanner Dibble behind as they head into turn 7 once more, but rolling the way on through it. Meanwhile, we do look here to Samuel Grant, who are battling with in Henneberry here, and I think Henneberry making his way on through with Grant, making a bit of an error coming into the chicane of 5-6. Alternatively, deciding to go for the position swap here, but the two Bear Pope drivers looking to carry on, but in fact, I think it's game on here as Grant comes back up the inside versus Henneberry for P15 overall. Not a change of class position, with Grant being the Pro-Am and meanwhile Henneberry being the Am, but as they roll their way out towards the end of this lap. Meanwhile, we look back up to Logan McKenzie here, battling for P9, trying to hold off Fernando Takahashi. And as they make their way through the right-hander of turn number 12, we can see that Alvarez going very deep out the corner and rolling their way into turn number 13. Well, they stay as they were for the time being, but meanwhile, Aaron Law here having to defend versus Hendricks in the battle for P4 as they head their way down towards turn number 1. Well, who is it going to be who leads come the exit of the opening corner here? Hendricks will feel as though he's got all the speed he needs for this run into the opening braking zone. Lars tucked in behind already, so I think that tells part of the story, but as they roll the way on through it, meanwhile just behind Francois Schenck battling there with Tanner Dibble as they come through. Dibble takes the place off of Schenck, and then we have Fernando Takahashi here still trying to find his way past Alberto Alvarez to gain P8 overall. Of course, the Am leader of class by 12 seconds over Ian Henneberry, continuing to try and make his way up through the field, but the middle of the pack Jedi driver here from Brazil definitely right now battling with the greats of other classes rather than having to worry about his contemporaries. And as he comes through 5 and 6, he'll feel very happy with this, but of course he's got to be wary of the fact he doesn't want to push his luck too hard, because we've seen a good number of drivers in lower classes fight their way up through the field, fight their way against the higher classes, only for a major error right towards the end of the race to undo all that hard work. And you have to ask the question, should they have just turned it down by 5%? And that's what will be on Takahashi's mind, of course. When does he say enough's enough and looks to consolidate the position he's in? But as they make their way through turns 8 and 9, we have clarification there from Jason Landry in the YouTube chat, but the setup the drivers are running today has no traction control available, and with that you can imagine our drivers will be conscious of the fact when they get the throttle down, they won't have any TC system or traction control system that's not in full to interrupt their application of the throttle, so it will make these cars just a little bit more nervous on power. But as they come on through, we can see Jordan Butler here trying to hunt down James Carr defending in the run to turn number 12, and Will Butler stays ahead for the time being, but James Carr definitely thinking about trying to get the move on as they roll the way to the end of this lap, and we get to ever closer to the point of moving into the second half of this race. But meanwhile up front again, we can see Jason Landry goes on to the 8th lap under race conditions, and the top two creeping away as they make their way into the opening corner. The gap now up to 8 tenths versus John Lauzon and Mika Hendricks, but it's not enough at the moment, with a distant tow of course being worth what is effectively a margin of 1.5 to 1.7 seconds. And where the tow engages, and particularly when you get to within a second, you really do feel the tow pick up massively, or the slipstream as it's also known. And as they make the way down the back straight here with John Lauzon, he's being harried by his teammate, but I think here Hendricks not looking for the move immediately, but allows them down the inside. I wonder if they're going to do a swap here under braking into turn 7. Perhaps they feel as though Hendricks is the faster driver. The swap occurs, and Hendricks immediately now will be tasked with reeling in the top 2 and bringing the rest of the pack into the fight, because of course they'll be bringing Aaron Lar with them, also Tanner Dibble and Francois Schink. Those are all pros. And as we look back to Alberto Alvarez here, well, he's made his way past McKenzie, but Takahashi going round the outside. It's going to be very bold from the AM leader. He wants more here as they make the way through 9 into 10. Alvarez covers him off, but Takahashi definitely set his sights as high as possible today, as we see it there, the Toyota getting ever close as they make the way out to 11 and down towards 12. And as they make the way into the braking zone here, Takahashi looks up the inside, goes for under braking. It's going to be very tight on corner apex here. Alvarez got more width to the corner, but he gives the space there to Takahashi. Takahashi is not able to exploit it. And as they make the way through 13, well, now they stay as they were. You see Logan McKenzie inching close to this battle as well. And will McKenzie will want to keep well in the hunt for the win of the Prime Class. There's no question about it as they head on through to the next lap. But coming on down, we look up to Aaron Lar here, who right now has the pressure of Tanner Dibble behind. And Dibble will, much like Logsdon versus Landry, doing the same of just staying behind and not trying to put too much pressure on. He doesn't want to lose out. As meanwhile, speaking of one driver who is losing the place right now, well, I believe it will be Craig Parks on the right. Your picture is being passed by Bearpoke Racing's Samuel Cran as they head down towards turn at number 1. But of course, it's one thing to get alongside here, but to take the position entirely, battling through turns 1, 2 up towards 4 is a different matter altogether. And Parks knows that if he can stay on the outside to inside, he may just get the place back. He gets a good run. Cran turns into 2, but Parks is still there. Brilliant side-by-side stuff between the two drivers. They battle for the final spot on the prime podium, but Cran gets ahead and gets the move done as they make the way to turn number 4. And now Cran's next title will be James Carr, Pro Class driver, who is 5 seconds up the road. But as they make the way through the chicane here, Parks did everything he could there to stake the fight all the way towards turn number 4, but Cran committed to it and got the job done. But as they head onwards here and up towards the next corner, meanwhile Jerome Bajula is just behind this group in a P15. Well, P10 the Pro Class right now, one of our lowest placed pro drivers, in fact our lowest placed pro driver out on circuit, coming into at turn number 7, looks around the outside here at Parks. Parks will defend, but Bajula has got the speed, he's got the grip, and goes around there to make the move for P14. And as they head up towards turn number 10 and through the right hander now, I think we will see a stabilisation here for the meantime. But meanwhile, we look back up to your leaders here as they head onto the start for the straight. And Hendricks, well, how only a couple of laps and being unleashed there by John Lauzon has made such a difference as they head down towards the right hander here. Hendricks looking up the inside, and I think if you're looking for a disruptor in this pack, it's Hendricks. He's decided, right, I'm going for this. And as they head into the braking zone, up the inside of the pair of them, and Mika Hendricks takes the lead of the race, or does he? As Landry looks to come back on the inside into 2. It's going to be 2 wide all the way through the left hand. We've got a car parked up there that I believe, we're not quite sure who that is. I think that may have been Dan Vitcher, but as they roll their way through the right hander at turn at number 4, in fact I think that was Hernandez based on the colour of the car, but we're not quite sure on that. But either way, as I try to make the way through, Mika Hendricks a phenomenal run, and James Logsdon takes P2 as a result of it there. The Bearpoke Racing driver making the ground, and now Jason Andrew drops back to P3. But of course, in the mind of these drivers here, they've got to be conscious of the fact that all this battling is bringing more and more of the pack together. And now we can see the top 7 only separated, but what is a margin there of 2.6 seconds. But most pivotally, perhaps, the top 6 separated by a margin of 2 seconds in its entirety as they all make their way on through the right hander at turn at number 10. But rolling the way on down the round right now, at any moment it could turn around as they head into 12 in terms of who is the leader onto each and every lap. And we have had a couple of pit stops for drivers here, and we're not normally the number of pit stops we would expect, but I do believe everyone who's made a pit stop so far is due to an incident on circuit. And Mika Hendricks almost with a snap bit of oversteer that caught him out coming out of turn 12, but kept it together there with the traction control. Of course, as we said earlier, these cars will start to become very snappy in terms of their throttle response. They'll become nervous on the throttle, despite the horsepower perhaps being half of what you see in a GT4. But again, when you've got a very light car and a very thin wheelbase, front engine rear wheel drive, those rear tyres do the hard work of power deployment, and they feel it when they haven't got something to restrain the power. But as they make their way down towards turn 1, Logsdon looks back up the inside here. Logsdon wants the lead of this race, and as they make their way into the right hand apex here, Hendricks complies. He doesn't fight this too hard. Well, Hendricks has definitely shown to us all now that he wants to win here today, and that he's got the bravery to do it under braking into the opening corner. But of course, we only just moved in to the second half of this race. We've still got 12.5 minutes to go. And with that time remaining, anything can still happen. And we're speaking of things happening right now. We see in Henneberry here, battling side by side with Glenn Bratton in the run through turn number 11 up towards 12, taking what is their P5 in the AM class of his rival as they head into the braking zone here for 12 and gets it done quite nicely. But as he heads on through, meanwhile, we're hearing that James Carr's been involved in a little bit of a spin, heading through turns 1 and 2 and has dropped back to P15. As we see him tucked in behind here, Craig Parks, but meanwhile just in front, Jerome Bajulais all over the back there. Samuel Cran, the pro driver here, hounding and hustling the Pro-Am of Cran as they head down towards 7. Can he find the move here in the number 99 car? I think he's going to have a good opportunity here to get it done, but will he decide to go for it, or will he wait a little bit later? In fact, he waits then. It looks like there's a bit of damage on the front of the car there for Bajulais. The front right panel from the driver's perspective, front left from the camera we just saw as it now turns on around. I wonder if there's been a bit of a knock to the car for the Beavers Energy drivers. It just looks like their front bumper and indeed the whole panel around the front right tyre is crumpled in by comparison with how it should be. But as they make their way out to 10 and 11, Bajulais up the inside here. He's going to go for one. Hernandez there on the outside, a lap down. Blue flags waving. To be fair, he can't make it any more clearer where he's putting the car. And as they make their way down into turn 12, Bajulais gets it done. But meanwhile, we look from them back up to the leaders here, and we can see in the battle for the overall win, well, Hendricks on the inside of Logsdon. Meanwhile, Laus on the inside of Landry. And will the Beavers Energy pair definitely trying to make as much ground as they can. They're in haste here as they head through 1 and 2. Hendricks retakes the lead and Laus on up to P3. But with 11 minutes to go, there's still plenty to unfold here, we reckon. I don't think it's over yet. Indeed, now it's all about survival for these drivers in terms of just holding to the position and keeping it calm and collected and not making any mistakes. But when will we see the break? Of course, you could liken this to watching something like Tour de France, the major bicycle race of each calendar year, whereby you do have that lead pack all back and forth, staying together, exchanging places, but nobody's really breaking away. And when they do get into those final 5 kilometers or final 5 minutes here, you start to see the change of what is that tempo where the leaders now try to break away from one another. And will it be Hendricks who tries to do so? And you can see already putting half a second gap between himself and James Logsdon, but Logsdon staying close then. Lauzon falling a little bit further back, and in fact I think Lauzon here may just be starting to create a gap for the top 2 as they head through turn number 11. And that's not to say that Lauzon's entirely off the pace, but I'm just getting the feeling that Lauzon here may not quite have enough pace at this point of the race to stay with the top 2, and he'll be reliant on the toe to just keep him within attacking distance. As meanwhile we can see that, oh goodness me, and Jason Landry coming into contact there with Tanner Dibble on the exit as well, both into the tyre barrier there, and will both drivers in a nasty run. Looks though Landry going quite slowly out of 12, turns the car on around, and both of them with wounds to their cars. It's going to open up the field now in terms of who's coming through to take a top 10 finish here today, including Logan McKenzie, who moves up to P2 and overall still P2 in class behind Alberto Alvarez, who's 5 seconds up the road. But this is an unexpected turn in events, and well, as they now try to deal with the situation, we see here Samuel Cran still behind Bajulais, but he's got Craig Parks accompanying him. Parks is not done in trying to chase down that potential podium in class as we jump on board here with a privateer as they make their way down towards turn number 1 and charge their way onto a 13th lap. But as they head down, you can see Cran already taking a little bit of a peek there versus Bajulais, who in return responds by bringing the car into the middle of the road. Now Parks here, tucked in behind on the brakes they go. We're on the way into the right-hander as they come on through. Bajulais definitely thinking 2 minds here of whether he needs to defend versus Cran or whether Parks will do the hard work for him in terms of making Cran look backwards. But as they roll the way through the right-hander, a turn at number 3, and we get clarification from Jason Landry in the YouTube chat to say that slowdown the exit of turn 12 was due to a corner cut, so it was a slowdown by default and then compounded with the contact with Tanner Dibble. But as those 2 drivers in the pit lane both take a fast repair and get the car sorted back out to the circuit, you can see they're rejoining P17, P18, Landry ahead of Dibble. We continue to ride on board here with Parks, who's not finding a way on through at the moment. He stays behind for the time being as they head their way into turn 7 under braking. It looks like Cran's the faster of the 2 drives through the medium speed corners, but Parks staying well in the fight and particularly enjoying the lower speed corners. That seems to be where he's able to get the job done as he takes a nice tight line there through the chicane. Meanwhile, Cran completely out of sorts, and as they make the way out to 10 up towards 11 now, building back up through the gearbox here. You can see Cran definitely trying to break as much of this toe as possible as we've got Francois Schink into the pit lane, interestingly enough, and we'll have to try and find out why he's into the pit lane. Is it a potential drive-through penalty? Albeit I don't think he's done enough to pick up Alonso as Cran goes a bit deep. They make the way to turn 13. Parks is going to have to go all the way around the outside, but he goes overly deep and into the pit lane he comes. Well, I think here we've got quite a few pit stops. We haven't seen Parks pick up a drive-through penalty. I wonder if here our drivers are worried about the fuel situation. They should normally have enough fuel to get to the end of the race, unscathed on fuel capacity, but perhaps there's been a little bit of an error with the setup here and now. There's going to be an all-new strategic component in this race, but as they make their way down towards turn number 1, it's going to be on the minds of so many drivers here. If that fuel tank, if that gauge is looking red in terms of warning lights and running out of fuel, then for our drivers now, anybody who has potentially been sipping on the fuel may have just got this right. Indeed, if anybody spotted it early on in this race that they would have needed to take an unexpected pit stop to take on fuel, which of course not expecting the sprints here, but our drivers will need to react. And well, as we see James Carr here holding position over Samuel Cran, Carr gradually coming back into this race after the struggles early on. But with that pit stop shaking things up, Butler, Pajulas and Craig Parks into the pit lane. More pit stops surely to come. And we're right now for your race leader, Mika Hendricks here. Has he got enough to be able to hold on with that unexpected strategic element in this race? Of course, he's had to play strategy in terms of keeping Logston at bay, but they put a 2.5 second gap between themselves and Lauzon behind. And as they come on through turn number 13 into 14 once again, it does look as though it's coming down towards a two-way fight as John Lauzon going a little bit wide there, coming out of 13 into 14, but staying clear of Aaron Lahr for now. But the Beavers energy driver here looking to get on the podium, and of course with the run of bad luck he had at the start of the season, the opening couple of rounds, and really putting that bad luck to bed at the Circuit of the Americas last time out, and now on the course to potentially pick up a podium here if all finishes as planned. Or heading on down here, that'll definitely be a reversal of fortune and a positive one to boot as he heads into turn 1 for the 15th time of asking. But as he heads through, meanwhile Jason Landry looking up the inside as we've got a car off there, and I believe that's Hernandez with a major mistake there, coming out of turn number 10 into 11 very shortly on the inside there. But meanwhile we can see Butler having to fend off Jason Landry as we've got Cran into the pit, so there's definitely full fuel drama. And as our drivers that make the way around here, will we see anybody else have to make a quick dance into the pit lane in order to be able to get to the end of the race? We've also got Ballard into the pit lane. And now Jordan Butler still holding off Landry for now in the battle for what is P7 in the pro class, as they make their way across the timeline and down towards turn number 1. Well, we haven't seen any more of our pros inside the top 10 make their way into the pit lane, so I think everybody now trying to just inch the fuel tank to the finish line. But Landry looking up the inside here at Butler, he's got the overspeed, goes through on the brakes here. Butler not really able to respond, perhaps looking for a cutback coming out of 1, but in the end Landry gets it all settled nicely on the brakes and makes it count. As meanwhile we do look from them to John Lauzon, who continues to have Aaron Lahr ever close behind, but we can see how the field has definitely spaced out now with the unexpected pit stop and also the instance for a number of drivers. But we can see that Aaron Lahr into the pit lane, John Lauzon stays out, James Logsdon into the pit lane as well. So it's Beaver Buzz 1-2 now as they make the way on through, but have they got enough? 5 minutes to go plus the final lap, and as they head across the timeline with Hendricks and Lauzon could get that fuel tank to go all the way to the end. Of course that'll be a huge achievement in its own right, and well, we do know that a good number of drivers including Hendricks are not adverse to fuel saving. But as they make the way down towards turn 1, we'll have to see how far that fuel tank can stretch, as we know Jerome Bajulas making the move there on Ganesh as they make the way through turn 7 into 8-9, and Bajulas definitely trying to fight his way up through the field, and currently 5 seconds off next pro driver Tanner Dibble, and will be the first pro driver he's seen in some time in this race, given the way it's unfolded with the pit stop thrown in for measure. But as he heads through 11 and into 12, his focus will be just keep putting the laps in, and definitely Jerome Bajulas' pace has been one of the strongest in terms of those outside of the top 5, and as he heads up through turn number 12, he carries on at this rate or not, well, he may just be rewarded for it. But as he rolls his way to the end of this lap, we look to Craig Parks meanwhile, who trying to inch closer to Ines Yusel. Remember, did not qualify, started from what was the back of the grid, but Yusel has made his way all the way out to P3 in the AM class, and to be fair, perhaps the unsung hero of the AM class, albeit yet to take the pit stop. But can he go all the way to the end as they make the way down towards turn number 1? Craig Parks getting close. And of course we can see here with the toe. Park should make this a formality with a move, and Usul won't want to battle it too hard, given the fact that he will need to try and stretch the car around as they make the way into the braking zone now. Parks up the inside, plants it nicely on the braking. No heroics there. A little bit of a moment coming off the apex curb, just clipping at the rear right tyre, but brings the car back down to terra firma and makes the move. And Craig Parks moves up to P15, head of English Usul there, who now drops to P16 but stays P3 in the AM class. But meanwhile, into the pit lane, Mika Hendricks and also John Lauzon from first and second in the race. So Beaver Buzz have not been able to go the distance. Meanwhile, Logan McKenzie comes on through here, and my gut feeling tells me if there's one driver who will have spotted that he needs to save fuel if he wants to get to the end of this race, it is Logan McKenzie, because we have seen in other series as well as in the middle of the pack racing league, for example the Alpha Touring Challenge, just how strong McKenzie's fuel saving has been from race to race, season to season and calendar to calendar. But as he heads across the timeline, he will now take the lead of this race, and he finds himself in a rare position, and we have not yet seen a driver outside of the pro class take an overall win. And with John Lauzon and Mika Hendricks leaving their pit boxes now, Hendricks of course leaving his well ahead in time when they make the way up to speed. But I think James Logster's going to come on through here to retake the pro lead, but with what is a 7.5 second gap to McKenzie. Will he be able to close McKenzie down in time, or will he find that McKenzie has done enough as they make the way through 3 into 4? Hendricks comes out behind James Carr, and well, credit to James Carr, who's made his way all the way through the field. And James Carr also trying to go to the end, but he gets it wrong on the exit of 4 as he clears the apex, and the car goes round with some oversteer. And as a result, the number 17 driver will be absolutely fuming right now with the Vallis, an error that's cost him so dear, as Lauzon comes on through to take P6, that's P5 in the pro class, as they make the way up towards turn number 7. But I can tell you already, in terms of that gap between McKenzie and Logston, the gap is coming down extremely quickly. James Logston has already stripped out a whole 5 seconds of that gap. McKenzie is tiptoeing around. He is sipping fuel here. He does not want to come into the pits. He wants track position all the way to the end. But just look at how Logston is roaring after him here. It's almost as if they're in 2 different races, and that's for the simple reason McKenzie just cannot afford to use any fuel. But meanwhile, late drama, Ines Usul has had to be towed to the pit lane for an incident, and he's dropped out of the running of the top 3 of the AM class very late in the day with only 1 minute to go. One more lap remaining, and James Logston takes the lead of this race as he heads up through and onto the final lap. They'll do an 18th lap here today in the state of Indiana, and Logston leads as he heads down the start finish straight. McKenzie has not got enough grunt in the car to be able to fend them off. He's just got to see where he falls in the order, and to put it in perspective, that last lap for Logan McKenzie, a 54.0. Meanwhile for James Logston, a 42.4. McKenzie is a whole when he's 12 seconds off the pace. He's just not allowed to use any of the gearbox as he makes way into turn 1 and just lets Francois Schinkel on through. He will coast every corner. He will keep it in the highest possible gear. Meanwhile, James Carr also trying to go all the way to the end without the pit stop. And as they make the way through turns 1 and 2, similar stories, Alberto Alvarez comes on through. And for Alvarez now, he will know he is 6 seconds off of McKenzie. And what you can see for the Pan Am Racing driver, he's got to go for it. This lap's going to be the fastest lap of his life around Indianapolis, because if he doesn't get it right, he won't be able to take the win in the Pro-Am class, and McKenzie will have pulled off some strategic magic. But as they make the way down towards turn number 7, you can see just how there James Carr tucking in and trying to absorb the toe of the back of Alvarez. And as they head up towards turn 7, will McKenzie just creeping into the corner right now. Alvarez is there. He can taste the Pro-Am win, but will he be able to get it? That's the question as they make the way through 8 to 9. Well, I think McKenzie at this point, he's got no defence to offer other than he can park it on apex and just snail travel his way off of the corner. But as they make the way out of turn 10, you see Alvarez goes around the outside. He's going to take the lead of the Pro-Am class, and McKenzie, and it's just 1 lap too far to be able to take the win home. But meanwhile, speaking of bringing wins home, as he makes his way through the final corner, he's been up, he's been in down through the top 5, but he's leading his way out the final corner, and it's Barepoint Races James Logston who takes the win here at Indianapolis ahead of Mika Hendricks in the Pro and overall categories. Hendricks P2, and it'll be P3 for Aaron Law, who returns to the podium ahead of Francois Schenck P4. John Lauzon will come on home shortly for P5 there as he crosses the line, and it'll be Alberto Alvarez, your Pro-Am winner, in 6th place overall ahead of Jason Landry, who finished P7 after that instant early on, with Jordan Butler P8, James Carr behind P9, and Logan McKenzie struggles to P10. Both of these drivers, Carr and McKenzie, both doing the no-stop in the end, the unexpected no-stop coming into the mix. Tanner Dill P11, Jerome Bajaz P12, and Fernando Takahashi comes on through to make it a win in the AM class. P13 overall, and a brilliant drive from the middle of the pack racing Jedi driver ahead of Craig Parks P14, and it will shortly be in Ian Henneberry who crosses the line P15, 2nd place in the AM class, and a great day today for Bear Pope Zero, and particularly for Ian, as meanwhile we see Samuel Cran at P16 ahead there of Mark Senegal, who recovered to P3 in class come the very end for the AMs for Sunday GT Turtles, and it's Nick Bader P18 there ahead of Adam Ballard, with Dan Victor P20 there, and a great drive to recover to P5 in the AM class after difficulties early in the race, and it'll be Glenn Bratton who comes out of the final corner, already a lap down as we're to understand it, but he finishes P21 there, the final finisher of this race, with Dave Hernandez P22, and the last finisher on circuit with Ines Usul, Roger Ganesh, Jermaine Warren, Edwin Offrant and Rodney Felker, all retirees from this race, but one absolute thriller all the way to the finish. But undeniably, James Logstone picking up his first win of the season today, and the Bear Pope Racing driver nailing this one to the mast, pouncing at the right time and not getting it wrong at all with regards to the strategy call, nor where he was in the pack all the way through the start of this race. But after such a thriller race, and indeed an unexpected addition of the strategy being thrown into the mix, ladies and gentlemen, let's take you through those race results, of course subject to stewards' inquiries, which have already been passed. So as we take a look to results in round number 5 of the Cruising USA GR86 Championship here today at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. This series hosted by the middle of the pack Racing League. James Logston there bringing home the win for Bear Pope Racing by a margin of 8.5 tenths over Beaver Buzz Energy's Mika Hendricks. Aaron Law, a 3rd place finish there, and it's good to see him back on the podium and really having a strong performance all said and done. Head of Francois Schenck for the privateer there, P4, with what is a 5.5 second advantage over John Lauzon at the finish line. Lauzon again fighting to a top 5 finish, and a well-deserved one at that. Alberto Alvarez of Pan Am Racing bringing home the win in the Pram class there, P6 ahead of Jason Landry, with Jordan Butler P8, and of course Jason Landry and what was Tanner Dibble having that coming together and upsetting the ribbon for the pair of them. But Jordan Butler just not quite on the pace of the top 5 today, but DNA Motorsports driver still happy, I would presume, with a top 10 finish there. And then we see James Carr on the no-stop, much like Logan McKenzie at P9, with McKenzie just behind P10 and finishing there what is P2 in the Prime class. Tanner Dibble, best of the rest there, P11 for DNA Motorsports, ahead of fellow pro driver Jerome Bajaz for BR's Energy. And then we come to P13 overall, and your AM winner, middle of the pack Jedis, Fernando Takahashi, and an absolute stormer of a performance today, with outright pace in qualifying translating into phenomenal race pace from start to finish. Craig Parks P14, the privateer, ahead of Ian Henneberry, 2nd place in the AM class, and the Bear Pope Zero driver, indeed the Bear Pope Zero team, will be extremely happy with that performance, given the fact he's been waiting for another strong performance to come, and it's been his day today. Samuel Cran P16 there for Bear Pope Racing, and we can see they're missing out in the end to Craig Parks, and we should point out Craig Parks in P14, your 3rd and final finisher on the prime podium there, in a brilliant drive holding off Samuel Cran to the line. Mark Senegal meanwhile completing the AM podium in P17 there, but P3 in class for Sunday GT Turtles, fighting with Nick Bader, and outside of the top 18 as we continue our way on down the standings. Adam Ballard P19 for Rockefeller Racing White, with Dan Victor P20, and then Roger Ganesh, the first driver to finish the race a lap down there, with Dan Victor being our final lead lap finisher, but Ganesh P21 for Sunday GT Turtles. Ines Usul with that unfortunate instance, the mini finished a lap down there, P22, after being in P3 in the AM class for so long. And then it's Glenn Bratton finishing a lap down ahead of Dave Hernandez there, the last of our finishers of this race under the checkered flag, ahead of Jermaine Warren, Rodney Felker and Edwin Onofre there. So 3 retirees come the finish, but otherwise 24 finishers and 20 of those on the lead lap. But what a brilliant race today at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and I definitely think it has set the tempo for what is to come in future rounds of the Midwest State Cup. But now, ladies and gentlemen, with that, of course, it is time for us to say goodbye to the state of Indiana, and indeed, it is time for us to wrap up. Thank you very much for watching. If you have enjoyed the show today and you want to know more about the Middle of the Pack Racing League community, then why not check out firstly our official Discord, invite link available on screen. If you want to go to the heart of all the racing action, or if you've ever wanted to join any of our series, that's the #1 place to go to voice your interest. Or if you don't want to join on Discord, you can always follow us on Twitter at the MPRL Twitter of twitter.com/MOP Racing, where you can keep up to date with all the latest upcoming series of 2023 and also the exploits, hijinks and heroics of Middle of the Pack Racing's esports teams in the official iRacing events. As we now look forward to our next event, ladies and gentlemen, well, of course, we make our way further through the Midwest states and we go to the state of Ohio for the classic Mid-Ohio Sports Car course. A highly technical course with that, but one that our drivers will love and indeed will go very well with the Toyota GR86 cars, and will join us on Saturday, the 25th of February, 2023, as we take a look back at how round number 6 unfolded. It's sure to be a fast and furious one, and indeed, who can keep it clear as they make the way through the complex corner sequences of Mid-Ohio. We'll find out then, but until then, we've been Middle of the Pack Racing. I've been your host and commentator, Paul TX141 Walsh, also known as Brit and a Spit, depending on what media you follow me on. And if you have enjoyed the broadcast today, do let us know and give the broadcast a like, and feel free, of course, to subscribe if you so desire. Indeed, as we are grateful there to Jude for saying top-notch broadcast. Jude's absolutely loved it. I'm sure you have too. But until next time, ladies and gentlemen, have a great rest of your weekend. Remember to stay well, stay safe, stay smiling, but most importantly, remember to stay on track. Good night.